All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Happy New Year. This is the first meeting of the Council of Economic Advisors in 2025, and we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid fashion. JP and our one spectator are in the room, and the rest of us are online. We are recording this meeting, and that's pretty much it. Thanks all for coming. And thanks for coming at this early hour. I hope this time is going to work for most on the regular, because we'd like to have sort of regular meetings where we know exactly when we're meeting and how long we're meeting for. So I guess we'll do just an attendance roll call. All of this has to be done, by roll call since we're mostly virtual. So if you could respond when I call your name. Dan. Please.
Here.
Bill.
Present.
Mike.
Here.
Jeremy.
Present.
And JP and myself. Okay, great. So the first item of business is the adoption of meeting minutes. Has everyone seen the minutes? Does anyone have any issues, changes, discussion?
I do not.
Okay. JP, do we need to do a roll call really for minutes, or is that something we can just accept by consent? I don't actually know. So
I was gonna say, I used to do them as a consent, like as just part of like a consent calendar, and if we want to, we can start to, being that it's a numbered item and we didn't do a consent agenda, but in the
Okay.
future, I can definitely just do them as a consent, like, portion.
okay. So we'll just go through and we'll just do a roll call today, and then in the future we'll just do it as a consent item. Okay. So so does someone want to move that we accept these minutes?
Motion.
So moved to accept minutes. Oh, sorry, Dan, were you going to do that?
Dan can be our second. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. So as far as the motion on the floor, accepting our minutes, Dan,
Aye.
Lise,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Mike,
Yes.
and Jeremy.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, minutes accepted. Thank you. Okay, so actually the biggest order of business that we sort of wanted to talk about is what are we here for? What's our what's our mission, and how and what do we hope to achieve with this committee? So we've talked a bit offline about this, and I think that it's been a topic of discussion amongst our members as well. But basically, we wanted to make sure that what we're doing is something that will have a real, tangible effect on the businesses that we work with, that I'm not sure if we represent, but that are such an important part of Needham's economic life. And so we came up, we being me and Lise and JP, we had a discussion about some of the things that might be good items to pursue this year, to sort of just refocus our committee on the mission. And so we just wanted to kind of talk through that and see if anyone else had any ideas, had any thoughts on the ideas that we were going to provide, and just talk about how we could help to improve the situation that Needham's businesses are in at the moment, which isn't terrible, but isn't great either. And so we want to see both our bigger businesses and our more commercial businesses, but also our retail businesses and restaurants thrive. And so what do we need to do to achieve those goals? So any thoughts before I sort of move on and kind of list out the things that we had been talking about internally, but then open the floor?
Oh. Can she see her?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
Heidi, can you see me?
No.
No, is there somebody
Who's
else?
talking?
You
It's,
can't see the L.
it's,
Oh.
Rick.
Oh, hey, Rick. How are you?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Happy New Year.
All right, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Something that we've been trying to promote for years. Which is kind of related to what we're going through here with this housing thing, is that. Our storefronts, basically, let's say. Chestnut Street and more importantly, Great Plain Avenue, in order to survive, they need foot traffic.
Mhm.
And how do you create the foot traffic? Well, the thought has always been residential over the commercial, so that people who are retired, who have time on their hands, who don't have to drive, they can walk downstairs and shop, use the restaurants and the coffee shops and things like that. I've never understood, I still don't understand, especially with what's going on in town, why there's been so much resistance to that. We don't have the type of spaces that can attract bigger retail. We have small mom and pop type spaces. You're not going to get the big bookstores or businesses like that coming to downtown Needham. It just it's not set up to accommodate those types of uses. So how do you support these smaller businesses who live and die on one bad month? As we saw what happened during COVID. You got to create foot traffic. In the past, some of the things that were done is they bought the sidewalk plows, because in the winter the snow would be piled up, and for the whole block on Great Plain Avenue, if a person was able to find a parking spot, they'd have to walk all the way down to the end of the block to get onto the sidewalk to be able to walk down to the stores. And you have young mothers with strollers or something like that, and it's just impossible. So some steps have been done, but it all comes back to creating the residential downtown that can create the foot traffic needed for a lot of these businesses to survive.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I think that's exactly the question. It's kind of what do we want to do? First of all, do we think this is our area?
Purview, right?
Do we need to tailor our charge to make this part of our charge? And then how do we go about that?
What's been disappointing is that was our charge, and we went through the meetings and the focus groups over the past few years and got feedback from people about what they wanted, and it went through a 2020 type election where everyone was supposedly informed. They had their elected officials, the town meeting people, vote on their behalf. The vote was in, and then all of a sudden they didn't like the results, so they wanted to overturn the election.
Well, are you talking about the current zoning? What do you mean?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully that will be resolved soon.
But a lot of
We'll
where
see.
we are now, a lot of that was built over the years about the need for the housing and the need, not just satisfying the housing, but satisfying the ability to create the foot traffic for the retail.
Sure. Well, certainly,
I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we're here to talk about. So one of the things that we had talked internally about is, and welcome, Adam, is potentially adding some seats to this committee so that we would have one retail business from both the center and Avery Square business areas, as well as potentially the same one seat from the center business area and the Avery Square business for restaurateurs, so that we would get more of that perspective and a little bit more information about how those businesses were feeling and what they needed. Jeremy, you want to?
So one of the obvious big fights regarding the zoning plan is true, whether it's true or not is not really the issue, but there's obviously a perception that the quote community has not been heard on the issue. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if you're thinking about expanding, is it useful to maybe even find one of those people who's in part of the no organization crowd, you know, for whatever, I don't like their data or I think their facts are wrong, but notwithstanding, they have a genuine feel that they're not being included in the conversation. And so might it make sense to have the not business representative on this committee to, you know, at least bring a viewpoint about, you know, how changes in business are impacting the not businesses, and we're including that point of view.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something to consider. Let's put that on our list. Because I don't know that we're making decisions today. And especially the decision to enlarge our committee is a big one. It's not one that we can make on our own. It's one that we have to propose to the select board because, you know, the select board sponsors this committee. So let's maybe reserve time for a more expanded discussion about who and what seats we should add. I don't want to make the committee too large. But, you know, opposing views or rather larger views, other views are always a good thing to have. I mean, I think that always sort of increases the conversation. So very good idea.
I have another suggestion regarding that.
Okay.
I think we should try to get younger in the group. Because, and I'm only speaking for myself, you know, I'm a person who's giving my opinion on making decisions for the town in a town that I'm probably not going to be living in. You know, in a few years. And I've always noticed that the various meetings that we've gone to or the focus groups, that there were more people probably over 50. Tons more people way over 50 than there were younger people. So it's odd that the decisions for the future of the town in which the younger people are going to be living are being made by people who won't be living here. So I would say, long story short, you know, try to encourage, you know, the younger families, the people in their 40s or whatever, to come and participate in making the decisions for the town that they and their children are going to be growing up in.
Excellent. Thanks, Lise.
So I feel like we're putting the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, because I feel like we need to figure out what this committee does. And then, yes, if the decision is we need to figure out how to activate Needham Heights and Needham Center, then who should we gather to figure that out? And I think both those suggestions, more voices, and it doesn't have to be to add to the committee. It could be a listening portion, like, please come and tell your thoughts. Like the Council for Economic Advisors is hosting an evening to hear your thoughts about how to help businesses. I do think that there's a lot of misconception about what we do. We are a business subcommittee to advise on businesses. So, but in how to advise is listening to those people. So I think you're right. We did, gosh, it had to be like 8 years ago, we did Reimagine Needham Center. It was an effort privately funded through chamber sponsors to get that type of input. I have all the materials on that, and we held it at Broadmeadow and Town Hall, and we had those big boards and brainstorming. We have sheets and sheets of ideas, and it was young people. And it was hard to get the young people because of the commitments with the young children, but we did get a sizable amount of people to come. And I have to tell you, the ideas haven't changed. I saw that long post on Facebook with all those ideas from that one woman, and those are ideas that I just keep hearing. So then the question is, that's our committee. Where do we get the people and the money to make the changes? And I don't think that's under our umbrella. So I think we have to do a lot of work on figuring out the steps and an outline of how we bring these ideas to fruition and where we start with this committee.
Yeah. So maybe the best thing to do here is to start with a review of our charge.
I think that would be great.
So I am going to, if I can, share my screen. I don't know if I can. so hopefully you're seeing this. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the general purpose is listed here. The Council of Economics Advisors established 2005, has 6 tasks. Study, investigate, and appraise townwide economic conditions and trends, promote, assist, and encourage the preservation, development, and location of new and existing industry, business, and commerce, assist the town in attracting the preferred mix of goods, services, housing, recreation, and entertainment.
Sorry, I'm old. Can you blow that up?
I could try. Oh, shoot.
Thank you.
It's actually not allowing me to blow it up.
I blew it up on my side. We're fine. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Because I don't think I have all the controls that I might otherwise have. So make recommendations on improving permitting and licensing functions in town, evaluate and advise the town on ideas for zoning changes that will improve the economic vitality of the town, advise and make recommendations to appropriate officials, agencies, board, and town departments on issues of economic development. All of these are things that, yes, we want to do, but I guess the question that Lise has proposed and that we have been discussing is there a step further that we could take? Is the Council of Economic Advisors able to take independent action to actively, put in place programs, for example, that might facilitate some of these goals rather than just proposing to the select board that they do it? Could we have a budget? Could we plan events? Could we look for grants? Could we, do other coordination between the businesses and the town that might facilitate some of these goals? Lise, what have I missed?
No, I think you're exactly right. Or JP can speak to this too. I think there's this conception the town has money for this and they're not spending it, or they're spending it differently. So it would maybe help this group if we knew how some of the expenses work when asking for some of the things we ask for.
Right. So I'm just going to throw out, well, I think even the point, especially of looking for grants for economic development planning, is something that we had really talked about a lot and would be a great idea for this committee. But it is something I think that we would need to go to the select board to make sure that we are sort of allowed to add to our charge. So I'm going to open it up to the floor, see if there are any thoughts on these ideas. Dan?
I mean, excuse me. I'm just wondering, do we want to start with almost, coming up with a mission, right? A mission statement, a vision statement, right? To say that we as a group are here to try to offer best practices to enhance the economic viability and vibrancy of our, and pick the 3 areas, right? Commercial, retail, and just the overall economic quality of our town. Right. And setting that this is our mission, how are we going to get there? Or maybe setting our vision to say, this is what we want to achieve. This is our mission on how we're going to get there. And then we could kind of maybe fill in the pieces below that to say, these are the actual things that we're going to do, whether it's chasing grant money, offering events, but just focusing on the economic vitality and the long-term success for our community, for, ourselves and the current generation and our children. Right. Yeah. Something along those lines. I'm an engineer, not a marketing guy, so I need some help wordsmithing, but I think kind of coming up with that might help.
Yeah. I agree. And I guess I'm wondering, I just want to take everyone's temperature because what I think we're saying is we would like to see this committee be more active, take more direct action within the community. That's a little bit of a change. And so we just want to make sure that everyone agrees with that idea, is on board, and is ready to sort of
Pitch in.
pitch in. Yeah, it's not going to be all the chair and the co-chair.
Hey,
So
I have a question.
yeah,
What is, how is this committee looked upon by the various departments and officials that we are here to serve? Is our opinion meaningful to them? Or are we just like, yeah, that's great, we're gonna do what we're going to do?
well, I think that's the thing. So right now we're an advisory committee. We would
Right.
look at things and make recommendations and not take any action ourselves.
I understood. What I'm asking is,
So to
is our advice considered to be valuable by the people that we are supposed to be serving?
well, I think that depends. One of the things that I think would make our opinion more valuable is to have a more relevant membership, to make sure that our membership is more well spread amongst the constituency that we're supposed to be representing. You know, and part of that is including some retail members, including some restaurateurs, and making sure that we have like an even spread amongst the business community in Needham. So I think that is an important element, because I think we've been pretty heavily commercially focused business, you know, like not retail business focused. The idea of foot traffic, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe less relevant to Dan than it would be to a restaurant in town.
So,
Yeah, Adam.
so, it's a couple thoughts. I didn't hear everything, but I think I caught a couple of things. My understanding was that, you know, we can take initiative. We can conduct studies. We can conduct surveys. We can speak to business. And we've done that before. And that's informed some of our recommendations, which was the way that I understood the thing was set up. And the other thought was that the intention of the committee was to have a broad understanding of the economy as a whole, which would include members from large businesses, and it would include members from medium-sized and small businesses. And, you know, we would try as much as we could to get a representative cross sample. It's been we have Bill Day, who represents a bank, which is a large, fairly large institution, and certainly grounded in the economics because of the clients and customers that Bill serves. And then we have businesses like Dan, who are effectively IT companies. And then we also have, we'd like to have more smaller businesses, but we do have some realtors, which represent that community. And
We had Tina Burgos.
yes, exactly. I mean, I think leadership could attract a more diverse, if you want to change the membership, I think we could, leadership could do an outreach an outreach campaign if you wanted to change the membership. I understand that, but what's the problem with the committee that you see, Heidi, that you're trying to solve?
First of all, I don't think there's a problem. I think that it just could be more expansive and could include more retail businesses and restaurateurs. I don't see that the committee currently has small retail business or restaurants. And when we talk about our commercial areas, there are distinct differences between our industrial commercial areas and our town centers. And I don't see those town centers represented here.
So you might have you know, a better chance than the rest of us have had. You know, you can talk to Matt Talkoff if you haven't already. I know you and I haven't spoken, but, you know, I know that, JP has made an effort to, you know, to reach out to other, businesses. And, you know, to try and attract smaller business. Like we talked to Liz, Tina, you know, Tina helped and wanted us to have some other local business. We want to have, you know, more representation with, you know, with other entrepreneurs. You know,
I don't think that
I think I know.
enlarging I don't think that enlarging the charge should be seen as a criticism. I think that allocating.
I don't take it as a
seats-
criticism.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just saying that allocating specific seats to specific types of businesses and businesses located in certain areas would ensure that we always have a member who fills that.
Assuming that it can be
Okay.
filled. That's been the challenge.
Yeah, no,
So
I
like,
understand that.
we do have a charge for, you know, for smaller businesses and businesses in the downtown. But we, you know, it's been a challenge to fill the seat.
No, I get that. I totally get that. Yeah. Jeremy, did you have a question or a comment rather?
Yeah, sometimes I think we overthink some of this stuff, but my point of view is that allocating things to very specific types does lead to problems. Like I'm technically sitting in what was originally the real estate lawyer seat, and I am definitely not a real estate lawyer. Right. I'm my specialty is mostly around innovation businesses. And so I just think if we too narrowly define things, I do think we end up having trouble recruiting and have to get exceptions and whatnot. And I think if we just look for talented people who want to support the mission, and we're conscious as we grow, and the select board is conscious as we grow of trying to be inclusive of the various different constituencies, then I think we're fine. I don't know that more structure gets us where we need to be.
Okay.
And
Heidi, I had a comment.
Let's just let Lise go and then whoever that was.
Okay.
I would just say that I've been on this committee. I've had the chamber seat now for like 3 or 4 years, and I don't feel like we've delivered. Like I really enjoy coming to this meeting and listening and being in the know. I get information, but I don't feel like we've had an impact. There's been things that we've been trying to achieve, but I think if you ask what this committee does, we're not quite sure what we do. And that's when Heidi asked me to be co-chair. I said, well, I really need to figure out what exactly the end goal is for this. And this is why this conversation is really important for me and hopefully for everybody else. Like, wouldn't you really like to know what we're hoping at the end of the day to be able to achieve? And sometimes, and Adam, you were the chair, and just sometimes the current situation wasn't allowing us to do certain things. And I think where this used to be a lot of zoning type of, it's kind of morphed into something different. And I do feel with the visibility that this committee exists now, people are learning that we exist because there's so much talk about the business health of Needham. Also, the working project for Needham Center people are learning that that's happening. And I think we have to be really clear about what our goal is. And I'm not sure if we do a new mission, does that have to be approved by the select board? I'm not even sure how committees work. We could go line item and line those, you know, it sounds so good when Heidi reads it and I referenced it, but are we doing those things? You know, should we put deliverables under each one? I really feel like we got to take this committee way back. And because I know it's been in existence, and I'm definitely a much more recent occupant of this seat.
Okay. Thanks, Lise. Mike, did you have a comment?
I did, yeah. So I've been on the committee maybe, I lose track, maybe 10 years. And the focus from my perspective has been the park. You know, obviously Bullfinch has a lot of holdings in what we call Needham Crossing. In fact, this committee came up with that name at one point. And I haven't seen as much focus on the park. And, you know, I think there's definitely some specific needs that need to be addressed. whether it be the physical condition, when you enter from First Ave, as I've been talking to JP about Restaurant Depot, and you've got two vacant retail locations on either side, the old Mighty Sub, the old Acapulco's, that I think there's a real need to reach out to those owners and try and facilitate something positive happening there. It's essentially the main entrance to the park, and I've heard from prospective tenants that it's kind of a physical issue, visually when you enter the park from there. And I also think there's needs on a zoning basis from a use point of view. We have significant vacancies still post-pandemic. A number of large employers, Brigham and Women's, TripAdvisor, IDG are all looking to sublease space. I don't know what the size of the park is as an economic engine for Needham, but there are needs there. And, we were precluded when the TripAdvisor upzoning went into effect to get medical use under some use descriptions, just to filter through. It's a little bit complicated, but larger institutional medical users are not permitted in the park. And it would take a change of, basically zoning to allow that, as they did on a friendly basis when Children's went in. So long story short, years ago, the committee was kind of broken, and I don't underestimate, the needs for, the downtown area and other focuses of the committee, but that's my perspective. And we used to have separate, subcommittees that focused on these various areas of concern, under the umbrella of the council, that maybe would allow us to still focus on multi-levels or multi-facets without sort of all being focused on one thing and not, maybe addressing other issues that may be of concern.
Good point.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think that we could definitely still employ that strategy of subcommittees to work once we've decided kind of what we want to do and who we want to be. Then we could establish subcommittees that could focus on those different types of retail, or rather commercial areas. Because you're right. I mean, we don't want to forget the park. I would hate to sort of refocus and then be unbalanced again in the other direction. So we don't want to be a seesaw. Okay. Any other thoughts? All right. Is anybody? Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry. So can you put the list we're talking about back up, as much as I
can
enjoy looking at our lovely faces, or at least the rest of you. Mike's handsome on the hero cam, by the way. I like it, Mike. You look like a fighter pilot. So one of the things we started talking about, but then kind of put down, and at least this may sound familiar to you, is if you look at that third bullet there about attracting goods, services, housing, rec, and entertainment, the thing that isn't there is weirdly attracting businesses. And so we had started a project about creating either a video or a website that was around, why Needham, as people were looking, particularly at the industrial corridor, a little bit less around Needham Center, kind of Needham Heights stuff. And it doesn't seem like we have that on here anymore. Or maybe that's the second bullet. I don't know. But the idea that, like, one of the key things we can do, I think, is help the town think about its marketing and message, which is not usually a thing that town governments, have a lot of experience in. It's right. It's not their usual shtick. I think we do a better job than most, but I know that there's opportunity here to get better.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we had talked about was even easing the flow of communication within the town. So when a new business comes in, making sure that not only they understand what they have to do, but also making some process for the town's various departments who would be involved in setting up that business to be communicated to internally to let them know that there's a new business, to ease that flow so that businesses have an easier time.
Yeah,
Get-
we don't, I'd say two things we don't see here, I've seen in other places, is I don't know that we have like a Needham small business map that a lot of towns do. It's literally like a 11 by 17 like placemat, and they use it in the tourism bureau and they use it for other things. And when people move into town, you go like, here's the thing. The second is, I don't think we have a getting started in Needham manual that
Yeah.
says, here are all the things you need to do, here are all your contact points.
Right.
You know, here's a checklist for you. And then that being the gateway to take that thing that comes inbound to the town and then making sure in the town that it's being shared and that we are then reaching back to those businesses so that they have like a really great, warm experience of starting the business as opposed to shouting in the dark and hoping somebody hears you.
Mhm, mhm. So, do we want to spend some time? I actually think that this purpose is fine. Like while maybe there are areas where it could be more specific potentially, I think that this charge is okay. I guess what I'd love to spend a little bit more time on is sort of our vision for what this committee does. And I'm wondering if folks might be willing to volunteer to do a little working group, even if that's just sort of drafts via email or something, that we could narrow down our focus and give ourselves a very pointed agenda to work on and execute, so that we know what direction we're going in as we strategize for actions that we could take. Is anyone interested in being part of that?
I'd be open to sharing some ideas or.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. You're brave. First volunteer. I will help with that. Anyone else?
I just feel as co-chair, I would be involved in that effort.
Yeah. And I think what we'll do is we'll send out, because I know that there are a few people who aren't here today. So we'll send out an email and recruit from the wider membership as well. I think I'm going to start. So, as the vice chair of the select board, it would be me who would be interviewing people to join our committee. So I'm going to start doing some outreach, but I would ask this membership too, that if there are folks that you can think of who you think might be interested. I think one of the reasons we chose this super early time slot was to facilitate everybody's workday, right? So we're hoping that for a retailer, this would all, because this is before the store opens or whatever, this would also be helpful. So if you have folks that you might want to reach out to who you feel like might be good for some of our vacant positions, again, Kate Urquhart is no longer on the committee, so we have an at-large seat. That would be really helpful too. You can send them to me personally, or just to have them fill out the application on the town's website. But having those voices in this conversation, especially as we develop our vision, I think would be really beneficial. So we'll take care of setting up sort of this vision thing and pass it around, and we'll have our next conversation will likely center on that. On our agenda, the next item was discussion on holding listening sessions with area business. And what I'm hearing and what I have heard is that the CEA has done a lot of that in the past. And I guess I would love your opinions on whether that's those previous listening sessions, especially, what with the pandemic and sort of intervening time, are those still relevant? Do we need to do this again? Do we need to reconvene? Do we want to meet the new, whatever new business owners exist, reconnect with old or existing businesses, I should say, not old. What do we think? Do we want to do more listening? Which, if we're going to help businesses, I think it's always a good thing to start from what help they want.
Is there a focus of information that you're looking for? Like is it just a general confab or is there something? One of the things that I found to be particularly helpful, like when Rick Lees and I had a specific purpose to reach out to businesses to either canvass questions about, it could have been done, I suppose, for the MBTA communities. We talked to them about different business initiatives or different we talked to them about parking issues. We've talked to them about and asked them questions about some of their specific needs, and that was really related to the downtown. And from that, for instance, we had made a recommendation to add parking signage, which was done, but they didn't really follow what we were kind of recommending for the signage because the signage isn't as visible. But that's an example. We had something very specific, which which led to a very specific outcome. So having something intentional or purposeful, I think you would be able to get more out of their time. But another way to do it is to try and get a number of businesses to come in, and meet with them and ask if they do have, I guess, general concerns.
Heidi, I was with Adam where we actually had a group of people together and on foot went door to door
Exactly.
to the businesses. We had a questionnaire, if you recall, Adam, that we'd go down the list of major topics and ask them to give us some ideas of things that would help them and help their business. It was not only the parking, but the aforementioned sidewalk plows came out of.
That's right.
Came out of those personal door-to-door type of efforts.
Yeah.
And as much of a pain it might be or use of our time it might be, it's far easier to get these opinions when you go to their place of business rather than asking them to come to some meeting. Most of them won't do that. They just can't. They have other things that are taking up their time. But if you go to them while they're doing their business, they'll always take a few minutes to tell you. And if they're invited to air their complaints, they certainly will. But it at least gives you direct direction as to what they feel would help them succeed in their business.
Lise, did you have a comment?
I did. Zoom took my hand away automatically. I would say that must have preceded me, Rick, because I didn't know about that. That's an excellent approach to getting feedback from that. I would say I would love to hear from people who just began their businesses. I don't do the ground floor membership anymore for Needham. We have another person who does it. So I am just so impressed with people who decide to plant their business and open their doors. I also, to Mike Wilcox's point, we were having monthly meetings with the chamber led by Greg with those large employers. And those are kind of gone to every other month. And our Dan is on that call as well as Mike. we would love to hear from the office park. That's very much a part of the chamber's wheelhouse and I think should be a focus of this committee. So any help, any way we could get those, many of them are first virtual or, not in the office very much, but I would love to hear what's going on over there as well. I think, and to Heidi, to answer your question, I think it's very relevant to hear their concerns now as to their concerns previously. I think it's a very changed landscape. We're very, very worried about our local retailers and restaurants in the coming year. I think Greg even mentioned it in his newsletter this morning. We feel like it's going to be a very challenging year and we should be ahead. This committee should be ahead of it. We should find out, and they're going to want more customers. And at the end of the day, there's nothing you can really do to get them more customers to come in their doors individually to each retailer and restaurant, but maybe collectively we can think of ideas. And the other thing I'd love to hear from the town person Who gets the phone call from the businesses? I don't even know how that process works after all these years. Could we have a guest speaker? What happens when a business is interested in coming here? Where's it go? Like, I
Okay.
think we have to really pull back the curtain and figure out at what point can this committee help after that phone call happens, or get that phone call to happen.
So one of the things that I'm thinking of listening to all these comments is that we actually have some very separate and distinct pieces of business that we want to look at. I'm hearing the town process, which I also don't know. So, and maybe JP can help us with that, but I think there's a lot of pieces to that.
I'll say I've been here a year and 4 months now, and I kind
still
of
don't.
understand it. but
Okay.
it's-
Then I can just imagine using it for a new business.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
You know? So I think definitely some clarification and maybe helping to smooth that process would be a great idea to put on our list. I do think that Mike's comment about the park and needing to, understand what the situation is now, especially post-pandemic, and those vacant businesses, and how we can potentially facilitate some excitement there. Personally, I'm also thinking that, Avery Square is potentially, depending on regardless of the outcome of the zoning, eventually the base compliance plan will be passed regardless of the state of the referendum. And that's going to reinvigorate that 100 West building, which is going to have a huge impact on Avery Square, as that construction will be a big disruption to that area. So that might be something that we want to talk with those businesses about and help them plan for. Same thing in the downtown. We're doing a downtown redesign, the planning of which is going to take a year plus. But then there's going to be construction. And I think that's going to be a major disruption for a lot of those businesses. So maybe we want to do some proactive planning and listening to those businesses about how that will affect them and what we can do to make it easier for them and let people know when they're open and so on and so forth.
That's a great,
Go ahead.
I love the intention. I think that's awesome. In terms of the downtown revitalization program that you're talking about, it would probably be, a useful exercise, for us to canvas, like Rick was saying, we've done in the past. A number of us have done in the past, to canvas those downtown businesses, go door to door, or, and certainly JP can do a lot of that too, and ensure that we get their participation in the process, because the whole point is to, it ultimately is to benefit those businesses while also making it the downtown more relevant to, to residents. And I think one of the things that Rick and I uncovered, and others, from our kind of walking tour, was, foot traffic. And there was also some questions about, I think, Rick, two of the businesses had a challenge with the design review process or the signage, and how there are certain restrictions on signage and how they could display certain things, which they didn't think was, helpful.
Yes, way too restrictive.
Right.
A company, for example, establishes its own logo and its own color scheme, and how they want to present themselves. And you can't have the town dictating, well, you can't use that color, or you can't, that logo won't work. You got to do this, you have to do that. You're taking away the very image that the company worked very, very hard to develop.
Okay.
So
So
anyway.
that strikes me as maybe even part of the town process. Like, what are the parameters within which you need to operate, but also how do you navigate the town?
Even on the Great Plain project, there's currently 3 seats on that committee that are earmarked for a downtown business, a downtown restaurant, and a property owner.
You're having
And I
trouble?
have attempted to recruit people. We had a downtown business that went to one meeting and determined that the lift was too high for them to attend the meetings and is no longer there. So I mean, just trying to get them, I mean, in an important project like that, trying to get people to volunteer the time, because it's a 3-year commitment for that project,
Sure.
of the time to go do it has been, it's been very difficult for small businesses and even property owners to, you know, accept. So if anybody has anybody that they know that owns a business down there, a restaurant, or owns property.
Liz is great. Liz Hay is great, and Tina was so thoughtful in you know, recommending her. And I think that she was on this committee for a few minutes, and then, if I remember correctly, and then I think the lift became too much for her too. And you know, Proud Mary, the woman who owns Proud Mary, I think she's,
Eileen, yes.
you know,
So what if we thought about, rather than having a membership, or in addition to, you know, I mean, if we're lucky enough to find someone who wants to do this, great. We're not going to say no, obviously. But what if we thought about like convening a forum that potentially they would come for an hour, you know,
that's great.
once a half year or something, and we could hear from a group, get their general thoughts, maybe establish, you know, lines of communication where they could send us information or thoughts, or, you know, irritations or whatever comes out of it on the regular, but not maybe quite such an intense commitment that, but we could still open lines of communication.
That's a great approach. One of the things that we did have before, or one of the things that I wanted to try and have is was Dave Downing, who's a Needham resident, who does a lot of work in retail representation. He's on the brokerage side, and is very dialed in and understands, you know, the different types of retail, you know, the retail market, the challenges and the opportunities, both in our town and elsewhere. He would be great to participate in that, and I'd love to find a seat for him here. And then in addition to that, we did have like Mike and you know, Adam Meisner, you know, were very helpful when we would, you know, have our monthly meetings at identifying, you know, what the challenges were for businesses in the, you know, in the industrial park, and also what other, you know, and also Rick has been very helpful in what the industrial sector has been dealing with, you know, and has been representative of some of those challenges. And I think we could each, you know, reach out to a couple of different businesses to try and get them to participate in that forum. And then if we can meet regularly, you know, and I would recommend trying to get Dave Downing onto the committee, because he's so knowledgeable and has a lot of resources that we could, you know, that could be helpful to the research that you're looking to conduct, either now or over time. And having those discussions with the brokerage community can also be revealing.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Okay, so I want to be respectful of time. We're coming up to an hour, and we're sticking to our schedule here. So I'm gonna ask JP and Lise, we're gonna work offline to sort of streamline what we've discussed here. We're talking about a vision statement and putting something like that together. We're gonna Dan stuck his neck out, so he's on the hook, but we're going to recruit from the rest of the membership as well to sort of try and narrow that down a little bit. Well, I'd like also to think about the creation of some subcommittees and figure out a way to make subcommittees that aren't a ton of work. I'm talking about idea generation here. Forums with relevant businesses could be one of those ideas, for example. We're going to talk about recruit all of the members of this committee, recruiting new members, especially retail members, because that's where we're light. But you know, I know Adam has Dave Downing, who he would like to recruit. So if you have any folks that you bump into that you think would benefit this committee, whether as full members or potentially as adjuncts, you know, particularly for subcommittees, send them to me. Let's get a conversation started. Otherwise, I'm gonna try to start sending out, you know, mid-month like updates of where we've gotten to from our last meeting and help to prepare for our conversation for our next meeting so that all of these hours can be really productive. And, you know, occasionally, you know, forums clearly are not going to happen within these meeting times. I think we need to reserve these for these conversations, but forums would be an additional commitment that some portion of the membership might attend. Before we adjourn, assuming you all want to, what else have we missed anything? Is there anything that's come up that we need to discuss in our remaining minute? If not, I would welcome a motion to adjourn and just say that if anyone has additional thoughts or requests, please email me in the meantime. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
All right, so I don't know if we really need to do a roll call vote to adjourn, but since we're here, we'll do it. Lise?
Agree. Yes, adjourn.
Dan?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
And Adam Mixner?
aye.
And Jeremy? Okay, and oh, Rick, you're still there. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You just don't appear on my screen, so I apologize. And in the future, I'll try to be in the room. I know this is a little difficult between the two. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Here.